My own son looked me in the eye and said I was a burden who needed to find my own place to live. I'm Frank Martinez, and I've spent 35 years building something my son never bothered to understand. He demanded I move out of what he called his house, told his wife I was cramping their style, and gave me 2 weeks to pack my things and disappear. What he didn't know was that I didn't just help build his life, I owned every single piece of it. And by the end of that week, his $3 million business empire was gone.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
I didn't argue when he said it. I didn't raise my voice when his wife Angela rolled her eyes behind him. I just nodded, walked to my room, and started making phone calls that would change everything. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think about family loyalty, because this story begins 4 decades ago when I made a promise to myself about the difference between giving someone everything and teaching them to appreciate anything. Most people look at me and see exactly what my son Marcus sees, a 72-year-old man who wears the same 3 flannel shirts, drives a 2010 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles on it, and clips coupons from the Sunday paper. Someone who watches old westerns on a small TV in his bedroom and asks if the thermostat really needs to be set above 68 degrees. Marcus Martinez, 45 years old, successful restaurant empire owner, absolutely convinced his old man is dead weight holding back his modern lifestyle. "Dad, you can't just shuffle around in slippers all day," Angela told me last month after I'd helped fold their laundry. "Marcus's business associates are coming for dinner. You need to either dress appropriately or make yourself scarce." Make myself scarce in the house I bought and paid for? The house where I've lived for 15 years, where I moved after Marcus begged me to help him get his first restaurant off the ground. The first sign I was losing my son happened 8 months ago. Marcus started referring to the house as our family home instead of Dad's place. Then it became the house Angela and I share with Dad. Finally, just the house. "When Angela and I expand our entertaining space," he announced over breakfast, "you'll obviously need to consider other living arrangements, something more appropriate for your age and needs." Appropriate. Like I was some elderly relative who'd overstayed their welcome, instead of the man who sacrificed everything to build his empire. The second sign came when Angela started posting Instagram stories from my living room, showing off their dinner parties and social gatherings. The captions always carefully cropped me out or mentioned dealing with multi-generational living challenges. Her followers would comment things like, "Time for Grandpa to get his own place," and "You're saints for putting up with that for so long." Marcus would screenshot the worst comments and leave them where I'd find them, never saying anything directly, but making his point clear. What Marcus doesn't know is that I've been watching his Instagram for months. Watching him show off Martinez Restaurant Group headquarters, the flagship steakhouse downtown, the 3 casual dining locations across the city. In his world, he built all of it through his natural business talent and hard work. I was just the lucky old man who got to live rent-free in his successful son's house. Marcus likes to tell people his father was a simple maintenance worker who did his best but never really understood the restaurant business. "My dad's from a different generation," I heard him tell Angela's book club last spring when they were discussing entrepreneurship. "Blue-collar mindset. He tries to help, but he doesn't really grasp modern business operations." Different generation, as if the foundation he was standing on had materialized from thin air. But the breaking point wasn't the dismissal or even the entitlement. It was what happened 6 weeks ago when Marcus brought his business partner Devin Chen to the house for dinner. They walked from my home like they were evaluating real estate, discussing how much more entertaining space they'd have once I wasn't taking up the back bedroom. "The whole main floor would open up beautifully," Angela agreed, "once we reconfigure the living situation." "Dad," Marcus said as Devin was leaving, "Angela and I have been talking with some senior living specialists. We found some really nice assisted living communities, places where you'd have people your own age, activities, proper care." Proper care. Like I was some invalid who couldn't manage basic daily functions. Devin nodded approvingly. "Smart planning, Marcus. Getting ahead of these transitions before they become crisis situations. My parents waited too long and it created unnecessary stress for everyone. Unnecessary stress? I nodded and said nothing, but that night I knew exactly what my son had just triggered. The conversation came 2 weeks later. Marcus sat me down in my own living room like he was conducting a business meeting. "Dad, we need to discuss your living situation. Angela is pregnant, and we're going to need the space. Plus, you'd probably be happier somewhere designed for seniors." Angela is pregnant. This was the first I'd heard of it, and they were using it as leverage to move me out. "Congratulations," I said. "When is the baby due?" 7 months, Angela said from the doorway. "We've already started looking at nursery designs. The back bedroom has the best natural light." The back bedroom. My bedroom. Marcus pulled out a folder of brochures. "We've researched several facilities. Sunset Manor has a golf course. Golden Years Village has a really active social calendar. They're both within our budget for what we can contribute monthly." What you can contribute monthly, like they were doing me a favor by helping pay for my exile. "How much are these places?" I asked. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Well, they range from $3,500 to $5,200 a month, depending on the level of care. But Dad, think about what you'd be getting. Meals prepared for you, housekeeping, social activities, medical staff on site." I did some quick math in my head. The cheaper option was still more than most people's mortgage payments. How exactly do you think I'm going to pay $3,500 a month on Social Security? Marcus exchanged a look with Angela. "Dad, we know money's tight for you. That's part of why this makes sense. These places handle all the financial aid applications, Medicare supplements, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about managing money anymore." Wouldn't have to worry about managing money, like I was some confused old man who couldn't balance a checkbook. What if I don't want to move? Marcus's patience started showing cracks. "Dad, be realistic. You're 72 years old. This house is too big for you to maintain alone, and Angela and I need to start building our family. You can't expect us to put our lives on hold indefinitely." Put their lives on hold in the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 15 years. In the house where I'd let them live rent-free while Marcus got his business established. What about my life, Marcus? What about what I want? "Dad, come on. You spend most of your time in your room anyway. At Sunset Manor, you'd have your own space, plus access to common areas, activities, other people to talk to. It's not like you have a social life here." Not like I have a social life. The man who spent 35 years networking with suppliers, contractors, restaurant owners, and city officials. The man who still got calls from people in the industry asking for advice. But to Marcus, I was just an isolated old man shuffling around in slippers. "What if I refused to go?" I asked. Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Dad, why would you refuse? We're offering to help you transition to a place that's designed for your needs. This is better for everyone." Everyone meaning him and Angela. What about what's better for me? Marcus stood up, his business owner authority taking over. "Dad, I'm trying to handle this respectfully, but Angela is pregnant and we need that room. If you won't consider the assisted living options, we'll have to explore other alternatives." Other alternatives? Like what? Legal action to remove me from my own house? A competency hearing to declare me unfit to make my own decisions? "I don't want to make this complicated, Dad, but Angela's health and our baby's future have to come first. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, but it's going to happen." The easy way or the hard way? My son was threatening me in my own home, and he thought he was being generous about it. "I'll need some time to think about this," I said. "You have 2 weeks," Marcus replied. "Angela has already called Sunset Manor to schedule a tour. We think you'll really like it once you see it." 2 weeks to vacate the house I owned so my son could turn my bedroom into a nursery. I sat in my recliner after they left, looking around the living room where I'd spent countless evenings, and realized Marcus genuinely believed he was solving a problem. He had no idea he was about to discover what problem-solving actually looked like. That night, I walked to my closet and opened the filing cabinet Marcus had never bothered to look inside, the one behind my old work clothes that contained 35 years of business documents, contracts, and financial records. I spread everything across my bed and took pictures with the phone Marcus had bought me last Christmas, the one he assumed I barely knew how to use. The documents told a story my son had never bothered to learn. Martinez Restaurant Group Incorporation Papers from 1989.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Initial capital investment records showing $125,000 in startup funding. Loan guarantees I'd signed when banks wouldn't trust a 25-year-old with restaurant dreams. Property deeds for the buildings that housed his restaurant. Equipment financing agreements with my name as priority borrower. Every single piece of Marcus's empire had my signature on it somewhere. Every loan, every lease, every major business decision for the first 10 years. I hadn't just helped him get started. I'd built the entire foundation he was standing on, and then stepped back to let him think he'd done it himself. I made a list of phone calls I needed to make in the morning. First, my attorney Jennifer Walsh, who'd been handling my business affairs for 20 years. Second, my accountant Paul Kim, who knew exactly how much the Martinez Restaurant Group was actually worth. Third, the private investigator I'd used occasionally for employee background checks, because I had a feeling I was going to need some very detailed information about my son's business operations. By dawn, I'd decided exactly how to teach Marcus the difference between owning something and a...
The papers arrived by courier the next morning. Beautifully formatted letterhead from Devon Chen's law firm, Chen and Associates. The language was polite, but firm. I had 14 days to arrange alternative living accommodations to allow for family expansion and improved living arrangements for all parties involved. Family expansion. They were making my eviction sound like a gift. The letter included a detailed timeline. Week 1, research and visit assisted living facilities. Week 2, finalize arrangements and coordinate move-out date. They'd even included a helpful list of senior moving services and estate sale companies in case I needed to downsize my belongings. Estate sale companies, like I was some deceased relative whose possessions needed to be liquidated. But what really caught my attention was the final paragraph. We understand this transition may be emotionally challenging, but we're confident this arrangement serves everyone's long-term interests, including your dignity and independence in an age-appropriate environment. My dignity and independence? They were helping me maintain my dignity by throwing me out of my own house. I read the letter 3 times, then walked to my bedroom and pulled out the filing cabinet Marcus had never bothered to investigate. The documents were exactly where I'd left them for 35 years. Martinez Restaurant Group Incorporation Papers, signed loan guarantees, property deeds, equipment financing contracts, and the folder I hadn't opened in over a decade. The one marked Martinez Family Trust. I spread everything across my kitchen table and took detailed photos with my phone. Then I made the first call I should have made years ago. Jennifer Walsh answered immediately. "Frank, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. How's retirement treating you?" Jennifer had been my attorney since 1995, when I'd first started expanding beyond the single restaurant. She was one of the few people who knew the real story of how Marcus's empire had been built. "Jennifer, I need you to prepare some documents, and I need them fast." "What kind of documents?" "The kind that remind my son who actually owns the Martinez Restaurant Group." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Frank, what's Marcus done now?" "He's decided I'm a burden who needs to be moved into assisted living so he can turn my bedroom into a nursery. He gave me 2 weeks to find my own place." "Your place?" "Frank, please tell me, you didn't let him think that house was his?" "I let him think a lot of things were his, Jennifer. That was my mistake. How fast can you prepare a complete ownership disclosure for all Martinez Restaurant Group assets?" "I can have preliminary documents ready by this afternoon, complete package by tomorrow morning." "Frank, are you sure about this? Marcus has been running those restaurants for 15 years. He's grown the business significantly."
With my money, my credit, and my connections, Jennifer. Every loan he's ever signed had my guarantee behind it. Every piece of equipment was purchased with financing I secured. Every lease was negotiated with my signature as backup. Marcus grew a business I planted, watered, and fertilized for him. Second call, Paul Kim, my accountant for 20 years. The man who filed my taxes and knew exactly how much money flowed through the Martinez Restaurant Group every year. Paul, I need a complete audit of the Martinez Restaurant Group. Everything. Revenue, expenses, asset valuations, debt obligations, the works. Frank, that's going to be a big job. The restaurant group has gotten pretty complex over the years. I know how complex it's gotten, Paul. I also know that my name is still on most of the underlying financial instruments. How long for a complete audit? If I pull my team off other projects, maybe a week. But Frank, Marcus isn't going to be happy about this. Marcus isn't going to be happy about a lot of things, Paul. Get started immediately. Third call. Detective Ray Santos, the private investigator I'd used occasionally over the years for employee background checks and fraud investigations. Ray, I need you to do some research on my son's recent business activities. Anything that might be relevant if ownership questions came up. Ray chuckled. Frank, are you finally going to teach that boy some respect? Just find out what I need to know, Ray. Check his recent contracts, any new partnerships, expansion plans, anything that assumes he has sole authority over the Martinez Restaurant Group. By noon, the machinery was in motion. Marcus had no idea what was coming, but he made sure I had plenty of time to prepare. 2 weeks felt generous when you had 35 years of documentation and a team of professionals who understood exactly what they were looking for. The family dinner was Angela's idea, a chance for us to discuss the transition like civilized adults, she called it. Just the three of us working out the details of my move in a calm, mature conversation. She cooked my favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes, like she was trying to soften the blow of my eviction with comfort food. Marcus arrived home from the restaurant around 7, still wearing his expensive suit and carrying himself with the confidence of a successful businessman. Dad, he said, settling into the head of the table, Angela and I have been doing more research on those senior communities. We think Sunset Manor is really the best fit for your personality and budget. My personality and budget? Like he'd conducted some kind of scientific analysis of my needs and financial capabilities. What did you find out about my budget, Marcus? He pulled out a folder of documents. Well, we estimated your Social Security and any pension income, looked at your savings situation, considered what you might get from selling your personal belongings. We think you could afford the basic package at Sunset Manor, and Angela and I are willing to contribute $500 a month to help cover the difference. $500 a month? Like a tip for good behavior. Marcus, what makes you think you understand my financial situation? Angela jumped in helpfully. Dad, we know money management can get complicated at your age. Marcus has handled all the household finances for years. We're just trying to take that burden off your shoulders. The burden of managing my own money in my own house? Marcus, I asked, what do you think this house is worth? He looked confused by the question. I don't know, maybe $800,000 in today's market? Nice neighborhood, good bones, need some updating. Why? And what do you think it cost me to buy this house 15 years ago? Marcus shrugged. Probably $400,000, maybe $450,000. Real estate was cheaper back then. Actually, I paid $625,000 cash. No mortgage, no financing, just a check from my personal account. Marcus frowned. That seems high for 2009. The market had crashed. Prices were down everywhere.
Not everywhere, Marcus. Not in neighborhoods where successful restaurant owners wanted to live. Neighborhoods where property values stay stable because the local economy is strong. Strong because of businesses like Martinez Restaurant Group. Angela looked uncomfortable. Dad, we're not here to discuss ancient real estate transactions. We need to focus on your future living situation. My future living situation in the house I own outright. Marcus, do you know why I was able to pay $625,000 cash for this house? Marcus was getting impatient. Dad, I assume you had savings from your maintenance work, maybe some investments. Look, the point is we need to make arrangements for your care. My care? In the house where I've been taking care of myself perfectly well for 15 years. Marcus, when I bought this house, where did you think the money came from? I don't know, Dad. You never talked about money with me. You just said you were ready to stop renting and wanted to own something before you got too old. I never talked about money because you never asked. Just like you never asked where the startup money came from for your first restaurant, or who guaranteed the loans when banks wouldn't trust a 25-year-old with no collateral, or who signed the lease agreements when landlords wanted established business owners as tenants. Marcus set down his fork. Dad, I don't know what you think you're proving here, but I've worked 16-hour days for 15 years building Martinez Restaurant Group. I've earned everything I have. Everything you have, Marcus, is built on a foundation you never bothered to understand. Tomorrow morning, you're going to start learning exactly what that foundation looks like. And you're going to discover that the man you want to ship off to assisted living is the same man who owns every brick, every piece of equipment, and every contract that makes your lifestyle possible. I walked to my bedroom and came back with the Martinez Family Trust folder I had.
The documents Jennifer delivered at 8 a.m. the next morning nearly broke Marcus before I even opened my mouth. She arrived in her black BMW, carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than most people's monthly salary. Marcus was in the kitchen making coffee when the doorbell rang, still wearing his bathrobe and thinking he was about to have a normal Thursday morning. "Dad, there's some lawyer at the door asking for you," he called out, like it was unusual for me to have professional visitors. "Jennifer Walsh from Walsh & Associates? She says you're expecting her." I walked to the front door and invited Jennifer inside. Marcus followed, clearly confused about why his elderly father was meeting with what was obviously a high-end attorney at 8 in the morning. "Jennifer, thank you for putting this together so quickly. Did you bring everything I requested?" She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Complete ownership documentation for all Martinez Restaurant Group assets, plus the trust documents you asked me to review. Frank, are you sure you want to do this here? We could handle this in my office, privately." "No, Jennifer. It's time Marcus understood some things about his business, and I think his own kitchen is the perfect place for that conversation. Marcus, would you like to join us at the table?" Marcus sat down slowly, staring at Jennifer like she might explode. "Dad, what's going on? Why do you need a lawyer? Are you having problems with the assisted living applications?" "I'm not having problems with anything, Marcus, but you're about to have problems with some assumptions you've been making. Jennifer, would you please explain to my son what the Martinez Family Trust is?" Jennifer opened the folder and pulled out a document with official seals and signatures. The Martinez Family Trust was established in 1989 by Frank Martinez as the primary holding entity for all Martinez Restaurant Group assets. The trust owns 100% of the restaurant business, all associated real estate, equipment, and intellectual property. Marcus looked confused. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Jennifer continued, "that your father owns everything. The restaurants, the buildings they're in, the equipment, the trademark, the business name, all of it. You've been operating the business as his appointed manager, but ownership has never transferred to you." "That's impossible. Marcus said, but his voice had gotten very quiet. "I've been running Martinez Restaurant Group for 15 years. My name is on everything." Jennifer pulled out another document. "Your name is on operational agreements, employment contracts, and day-to-day business documents, but the underlying ownership has always remained with the trust, with Frank as the sole beneficiary and trustee." I watched my son's face as the reality started sinking in. "Marcus, do you remember when you first wanted to open a restaurant? You were 25, fresh out of culinary school, with big dreams and no money. What did you think was going to happen when you walked into a bank asking for a $250,000 loan?" Marcus stared at me. "You said you believed in my vision. You said you wanted to help me get started." "I did believe in your vision. That's why I put up my own money and credit to make it happen." "Jennifer, show him the original loan documents." She pulled out a stack of papers that looked like they'd been handled many times over the years. "Bank of America commercial loan, February 1989. Primary borrower, Frank Martinez. Loan amount, $250,000. Purpose, restaurant establishment and equipment purchase." "But I signed loan papers," Marcus protested. "I remember signing them." "You signed as the designated operator," Jennifer explained, "but the actual borrower was Frank. The bank required someone with established credit and assets as collateral. At 25, with no business history, you couldn't qualify for this size loan independently." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, something Marcus had always assumed I barely knew how to use. "Marcus, look at this account." He leaned over to see the screen. "Martinez Holdings business account. Current balance, $2.8 million. "Dad, where did that money come from?" His voice was barely a whisper now. 15 years of restaurant profits that I chose to reinvest rather than spend on myself. Every major expansion, every equipment upgrade, every renovation, it all came from this account. Your salary comes from this account, the lease payments for your restaurants come from this account, the insurance, the utilities, the major repairs, all of it." Jennifer pulled out another document. "These are the building deeds for all 3 restaurant locations. Owner, Martinez Family Trust. Your son has been paying rent to your trust for 15 years, Frank." "Rent to my own business?" Marcus looked sick. "Rent to the trust that owns the buildings, yes. It's actually been quite profitable." Jennifer showed him a spreadsheet. "Between the restaurant profits and the rental income from the properties, the Martinez Restaurant Group has generated approximately $3.2 million in net income over the past 15 years. Marcus grabbed the papers from Jennifer's hands, scanning them desperately. "This can't be right. I built this business. I work 16-hour days. I make all the decisions." "You make operational decisions, Marcus, because that's what I hired you to do. But you never owned what you were operating. I let you think you did because I wanted you to feel invested in the success." "Why?" Marcus cracked. "Why would you let me think I owned my own business?" "Because I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become when you thought you were successful. I wanted to see if you'd remember where you came from, if you'd appreciate the foundation that made your success possible." Jennifer cleared her throat. "Frank, should I explain the current legal situation?" "Yes, please do that." "Marcus, Jennifer is going to tell you what your position actually is in the Martinez Restaurant Group." "As of this morning," Jennifer said, "you are an at-will employee of the Martinez Family Trust. Your father, as the trustee, can terminate your employment and management responsibilities at any time for any reason." Marcus stared at her in complete shock. "You're saying I can be fired from my own business?" "It's not your business, Marcus. It never was. You've been the general manager for 15 years and you've done a good job, but management and ownership are 2 different things." I stood up and walked to my filing cabinet, pulling out one more folder Marcus had never seen. "These are performance reviews I've been keeping for the past 5 years. Revenue reports, customer satisfaction surveys, employee turnover data, all the metrics that matter in the restaurant business." "Dad, why were you keeping performance reviews on me?" "Because good business owners monitor their investments, Marcus, And you've been my biggest investment for 15 years. Jennifer, would you read him the summary from last year's review? Jennifer took the document. Martinez continues to demonstrate strong operational skills and customer service focus. However, recent behavior suggests growing disconnect from company values regarding family loyalty and respect for foundational contributions. Recommend careful monitoring of management attitude and decision-making regarding non-business matters. Non-business matters? Marcus looked confused. Your decision to evict me from my own house so you could use my bedroom as a nursery, I said quietly, that was a non-business matter that showed me exactly what you think of the man who made your career possible. The kitchen went completely silent. Marcus stared at the papers scattered across the table, each one proving that everything he thought he knew about his life was wrong. Dad, I didn't know. You never told me any of this. I never told you because you never asked. In 15 years of working together, you never once asked how the original financing worked, you never questioned where expansion money came from, you never wondered why banks kept approving loans for a business that was supposedly owned by someone who started with no assets. But I've been successful, Marcus said weakly. The restaurants are profitable. I've grown the business. You've been successful at managing a business I built for you with money I provided and credit I guaranteed. That's not the same thing as building something yourself, Marcus. Jennifer started packing up her documents. Frank, what would you like me to do next? I looked at my son, who was sitting in his bathrobe in the kitchen of my house, surrounded by proof that everything he thought he knew about his life was wrong. Marcus, you have a choice to make. You can accept that you've been an employee who forgot to respect your employer, or you can find out what it's like to actually start a business from nothing. What do you mean? He whispered. I mean, you have until the end of this week to decide whether you want to continue managing the Martinez Restaurant Group with a proper understanding of who owns what, or whether you'd prefer to venture out on your own with the business experience you've gained and see how far it takes you without my money behind it. Jennifer closed her briefcase. I'll need your decision in writing by Friday, Marcus. Either way, there are going to be some significant changes in how the Martinez Restaurant Group operates going forward. The man who'd given me 2 weeks to find my own place was learning that I could give him 2 days to find his own career.
The next 48 hours destroyed everything Marcus thought he knew about his life. By Friday morning, the man who'd given me 2 weeks to find my own place was begging for 2 more days to figure out where his next paycheck would come from. It started with the phone calls. Thursday afternoon, Marcus called every bank where he thought he had business relationships, trying to understand his actual financial position. The conversations were brutal. First National, where he'd been confident about his line of credit, informed him that all Martinez Restaurant Group accounts were held in trust, with Frank Martinez as the sole authorized signatory. Dad, Marcus said, finding me in the garden, where I was calmly watering my tomatoes, the bank says I can't access any of the business accounts. How am I supposed to pay employees tomorrow? That's an interesting question, Marcus. How do you think you've been paying employees for the past 15 years? Who do you think was signing those paychecks? Marcus looked confused. I assume the accounting department handled payroll automatically. You mean you've been personally approving every paycheck I've ever received? Every paycheck, every vendor payment, every utility bill, every expense report. The accounting department prepares everything, but final approval comes from the trust. Jennifer handles the legal authorization, and I review the monthly summaries. But I never saw you reviewing anything. You just watch TV in your room and clip coupons. Marcus, do you think successful businesses run themselves? Do you think $3.2 million in assets just manage themselves automatically? I've been reviewing financial reports every morning for 15 years while you assumed I was just reading the newspaper. Angela appeared in the doorway, looking panicked. Marcus, Devin's been calling all morning. He says there are problems with the partnership agreement you two signed last month. What partnership agreement? I asked. Marcus went pale. Oh, the one where you promised Devin 30% ownership in the Martinez Restaurant Group in exchange for his law firm handling all our legal work going forward. Marcus grabbed Angela's arm to stop her from talking, but it was too late. I set down my watering can and looked at my son with the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. Marcus, did you just tell me that you sold part of a business you don't own to pay for legal services I never authorized? Dad, I can explain. Devin's firm has been helping us with contracts, lease negotiations, employee issues. It made sense to give him an ownership stake instead of paying hourly fees. You gave away 30% of my business to pay for services I never authorized. Marcus, do you understand what you just admitted to? Angela jumped in helpfully. It was a smart business decision, Dad. Devin's connections have been really valuable for expansion opportunities. Expansion opportunities in a business that doesn't belong to either of you. I pulled out my phone and called Jennifer Walsh immediately. Jennifer, I need you to review a partnership agreement Marcus apparently signed without authorization. Yes, he gave away 30% ownership in assets he doesn't own. Jennifer's voice came through clear enough for Marcus and Angela to hear. Frank, that's potentially fraud depending on how the agreement was structured. If Marcus represented himself as having authority to transfer ownership he doesn't possess, Devin could have grounds for criminal charges. Marcus sat down hard on my patio steps. Criminal charges? Jennifer continued. Plus, if the partnership involves ongoing financial obligations or profit-sharing arrangements based on false ownership claims, we could be looking at multiple felonies. I hung up the phone and looked at my son, who was beginning to understand that his problems were much bigger than finding a new job. Marcus, in addition to trying to evict me from my own house, you've been conducting unauthorized business on my behalf and potentially committing fraud with my assets. The partnership agreement was just the beginning. By Thursday evening, Marcus had discovered that his personal credit was entirely dependent on his employment with Martinez Restaurant Group. The mortgage on what he thought was his starter home was actually guaranteed by the trust. His luxury car lease required employment verification from Martinez Holdings. Even his country club membership was a corporate account tied to the restaurant group. Friday morning brought the employee meeting that ended Marcus's reputation in the local restaurant industry. I called all 3 locations together for what Marcus assumed would be a routine staff meeting. 62 employees gathered in the main dining room of the flagship restaurant, expecting to hear about new menu items or seasonal promotions. Instead, they learned that their general manager had been trying to evict the actual business owner from his home and had been conducting unauthorized deals with company assets. Good morning, everyone, I said, standing at the front of the room, while Marcus sat at a corner table looking like he wanted to disappear. Most of you know me as Marcus's father, the old guy who comes around occasionally and stays out of the way. Today, you're going to learn who I actually am. I pulled out the same documents Jennifer had shown Marcus 2 days earlier. My name is Frank Martinez, and I'm the owner and founder of Martinez Restaurant Group. For the past 15 years, Marcus has been the general manager, and he's done excellent work growing the business and maintaining our reputation for quality service. The employees looked confused. Several of them glanced at Marcus, who was staring at his hands. However, I continued, recent events have made it necessary for me to clarify some misconceptions about business ownership and decision-making authority within our organization. Marcus, would you like to explain to your staff why we're having this meeting? Marcus looked up, his face red with embarrassment. Dad, please don't do this here. You had no problem discussing my living arrangements in front of Devin Chen. You had no problem giving him 30% ownership in a business that wasn't yours to give away. I think transparency is exactly what the situation requires. Sarah, the head chef at the flagship restaurant, raised her hand. Mr. Martinez, are you saying Marcus doesn't own the restaurants? That's exactly what I'm saying, Sarah. Marcus has been an employee, a very good employee, but an employee nonetheless. And recently, he's made some decisions that show he's forgotten the difference between managing something and owning it. I pulled out another document. This is Marcus's official letter of resignation as general manager, effective immediately. I'll be resuming direct operational oversight while we search for new management. The room went completely silent. Marcus stood up abruptly. Dad, We agreed I had until today to make a decision about my position. You had until today to decide whether you wanted to continue working for me with proper respect and understanding of our relationship. Instead, you spent 2 days trying to figure out how to access money that doesn't belong to you and calling banks to complain about account restrictions you don't understand. Maria, the assistant manager, looked scared. Mr. Martinez, what does this mean for our jobs? It means your jobs are more secure than they were yesterday, Maria. The Martinez Restaurant Group is financially stable and will continue operating under experienced management. It means the partnership agreement Marcus signed without authorization is void, and Devon Chen's law firm no longer has any connection to our business operations. I looked around the room at faces that were confused, concerned, and starting to understand that their workplace drama was much bigger than they'd realized. It also means that anyone who's been wondering where expansion money comes from, or how we always manage to upgrade equipment when needed, or why our benefits package is better than most restaurants in the city, now you have your answer. Marcus finally found his voice. Dad, 15 years. 15 years I've worked for you, and you're destroying my career in front of my old staff? Marcus, you destroyed your own career when you decided the man who built everything you depend on was a burden who needed to be shipped off to assisted living. You destroyed it when you gave away part of my business to pay legal bills I never approved. You destroyed it when you forgot that respect and gratitude aren't just nice ideas, they're the foundation of every successful relationship. After the staff meeting, word spread quickly through the local restaurant community. Marcus Martinez, the successful young restaurateur, was actually just an employee who'd been living off his father's business empire while planning to evict the old man from his own home. Devon Chen's law firm immediately terminated their partnership agreement and began distancing themselves from what was looking like a potential fraud case. By Sunday, Marcus had moved back into his childhood bedroom in my house, not because I had invited him, but because he couldn't afford his mortgage payments without his Martinez Restaurant Group salary. Angela had gone to stay with her sister, claiming she needed time to think about their relationship now that Marcus wasn't the successful business owner she thought she was marrying. The man who'd given me 2 weeks to find my own place was learning that when you don't actually own anything, finding your own place becomes a lot more complicated than you thought.
6 weeks later, Marcus knocked on my bedroom door at 6 a.m. I'd been awake since 5:30, reviewing the monthly financial reports for Martinez Restaurant Group, something I'd been doing every morning for 15 years while he assumed I was sleeping in. The business was running smoothly under temporary management, but I knew it needed permanent leadership soon. Dad, can we talk? His voice was different now, quieter, more careful. The confidence that came from thinking you owned a successful business empire was gone, replaced by the uncertainty of a man who'd discovered he owned nothing at all. Of course, Marcus, come in. He sat down in the chair by my window, the same chair where he'd sat as a teenager when we talked about his dreams of becoming a chef. Back then, he'd listened to my advice about hard work and patience. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped listening to anything I had to say. I got a job, he said quietly. Line cook at Riverside Bistro downtown. It's minimum wage plus tips, but it's honest work. How does it feel to start over at 45? I asked, not unkindly, but with genuine curiosity. Humbling. Terrifying, but also... He paused, searching for the right words, clarifying. For the first time in years, I know exactly what I earn and exactly what I'm worth. No assumptions, no inherited advantages, just my skills and my effort. Marcus pulled a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket. I wrote something. I wanted to read it to you, if that's okay. I nodded, and he unfolded what looked like a letter he'd written and rewritten several times. Dad, 6 weeks ago, I tried to throw you out of your own house because I thought you were a burden holding back my success. I thought I was a self-made businessman who'd earned the right to make decisions about your life. I was wrong about everything. He looked up at me, then back at the letter. I spent 45 years taking everything you gave me without ever asking what it cost you. Not just money, though God knows you invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in my dreams, but time, energy, opportunities you didn't take because you were busy building my future. His voice got steadier as he continued reading. I never said thank you because I thought I'd earned everything myself. I never asked questions about how the business really worked because I was afraid the answers might make me feel less successful. I never wondered why banks trusted me with loans I couldn't qualify for, or why landlords rented to me when I had no track record, or where expansion money came from when we needed it. Marcus folded the letter and looked at me directly. I'm not asking you to give me back the management position. I'm not asking for money or help finding a better job. I'm asking for a chance to learn how to be someone you could respect again. What does that look like, Marcus? I asked the same question I had asked him as a teenager when he talked about his dreams without any concrete plans. I don't know yet, but I know what it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like assuming I deserve things I didn't earn. It doesn't look like treating you like an obstacle to my success when you're the foundation everything was built on. And it doesn't look like making decisions about your life without understanding who you really are. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where I spent my mornings. Dad, can I ask you something? Why didn't you ever tell me the truth about the business? Why did you let me think I was building something independently? Because I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become when you thought you were successful on your own. I wanted to see if success would make you more generous or more selfish. And what did you see? He asked quietly. For about 10 years, I saw a young man working incredibly hard to prove himself worthy of the opportunity he'd been given. You put in 16-hour days, you learned every aspect of the restaurant business, you treated employees well, and you built a reputation for quality and service. What about the last 5 years? Marcus asked, though I could tell he already knew the answer. The last 5 years, I watched success change you. You stopped working 16-hour days because you had managers to handle things. You started talking about what you deserved rather than what you'd earned. You began treating me like a burden instead of the person who made your career possible. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, Dad, the partnership with Devon Chen, how much trouble am I in legally? Jennifer says Devon is willing to void the agreement and write it off as a misunderstanding, provided you publicly acknowledge that you had no authority to offer ownership in a business you didn't own. No criminal charges, but your reputation in the legal and business community is finished. I deserve that, Marcus said. I tried to give away something that belonged to you to cover expenses I should have asked you about first. What about the house? Can Angela and I still live here when we work things out? Angela broke up with you 3 weeks ago, Marcus. She moved in with her sister permanently. She's not coming back. Marcus winced. Because I'm not successful anymore. Because the lifestyle she thought she was marrying doesn't exist without your money supporting it? But actually, Marcus, that tells you something important about what your relationship was really based on. You're right. And honestly, I'm almost grateful she showed me that before we got married and had kids. Better to learn now that someone only loves your money than to discover it after you've built a family together. There was something different in Marcus's voice now. Not just humility, but a kind of clarity that came from having all your illusions stripped away at once. Dad, I have a proposal for you. Not a request, not a demand, but something I'd like you to consider. I'm listening. I'd like to work my way back up to managing Martinez Restaurant Group, but I want to do it the right way this time. Start at entry level in one of the restaurants, learn every position, prove myself to the staff who watched me get fired, earn their respect instead of expecting it because of my name. Marcus sat back down in the chair by my window. I want you to pay me exactly what the job is worth, not what you think I need to live on. I want to understand every financial decision, every business choice, every investment. I want to know how much things cost and where money comes from. And I want you to document everything, like a real employee review process. If I'm not performing up to standards, I want to know immediately. If I start acting entitled again, I want you to call me out. I never want to forget again that managing something and owning something are completely different. What about living arrangements? I asked. This is still your house, Dad. If you're willing to let me rent the spare bedroom while I save money for my own place, I'd be grateful. But I want to pay market rate rent, not family discount rate. I want to live here as your tenant, not my dependent son. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him. For the first time in years, I saw the young man who used to ask me for advice, instead of assuming he knew everything. Why should I trust that this change is real and not just desperation talking? Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. Because I'm not asking you to trust me, Dad. I'm asking you to test me. Give me 6 months working as a line cook at minimum wage. Let me prove that I can be grateful for opportunities instead of demanding them. Let me show you that I understand the difference between earning respect and expecting it. He stood up to leave, then turned back. And Dad, thank you for everything. Thank you for the money you invested when I was too young and stupid to qualify for loans. Thank you for the 15 years you let me think I was building something independently. Thank you for teaching me this lesson before I became the kind of man who couldn't learn from his mistakes. Most of all, thank you for not giving up on me completely. A lot of fathers would have written off a son who tried to throw them into assisted living. You could have just taken your business back and never spoken to me again. After he left, I sat by my window and watched the sunrise, something I'd been doing every morning for 15 years while Marcus assumed I was just an old man with nothing better to do. Tomorrow, I'd call Jennifer about setting up a formal employee development program for Marcus with real benchmarks and measurable goals. But today, for the first time in 5 years, I felt like I had succeeded at the most important job I'd ever had. Not building a business empire or accumulating wealth, but raising a son who could learn from his mistakes and grow into a man worth respecting. Sometimes the best lessons are the ones that cost the most to learn.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.